All right. Okay, as I mentioned on Tuesday, we're down here at Module 9. These are the items that are due. Of course, we've been working ahead on these cases, and we've now come to the point where we looked at pivot tables as a prelude to using databases. And now we're ready to look at databases and how we can apply them and how we can use them. Now, the logistics of this are such that there's at the end of every module, there's an Excel file that tells you the case. This is just like the Excel, but this is with Access, that tells you the case and then the business problem and the DB skills that we're going to work on. Okay, we're going to find that file, and we're going to look at a company called Northampton Abrasives. And then the file that is in the Lambert and Cox text, and that's Garden 01. And as has been the case before, the Lambert text has a step-by-step approach. So you could look at Garden 1 and you could see the screenshots and see exactly how it's done, because it's going to cover a lot of the same stuff that we do, but maybe a little bit more. What we're going to focus on today is building tables and just some of the elements of a relational database and how and why they're important, okay? Now, the files that we're going to use, and I've got them noted here, it's the ACCDB1, and that's over in the files section of Kansas, of Canvas. And then, of course, the Garden 01 is going to be in the zip file for the Lambert and Cox text. Now, as you go down there, you'll be able to go down to the later modules where you upload Access case number 1, and you'll want to do that today after we finish. We're going to look about creating and modifying a sales support system, and we're going to talk about data tables and creating them. So that's pretty much what's on the agenda. And I'm going to go ahead and open up that ACCDB1. This is a company, Northampton Abrasives, okay? And we're going to talk about them and what that's all about and how these are put together. Now, as you've heard me say many times, you're moving into an era where you're going to go to work and you'll be working with a dashboard. And you should have watched the screencast from Tuesday in which we opened up Northwind Traders and we saw a little kind of a crude dashboard. The dashboard has KPIs, key performance indicators, some real time, some periodic, that you'll be checking and looking at. And what you're seeing will depend upon two things. One, your level of reporting, that is, where are you in the company's hierarchy? And number two, the kind of industry that you're in, okay? So I can't predict, but I can tell you that your data, that the dashboard is going to be the product of two things. First of all, it's going to be the product of it's going to be the product of a database, all right? And then it's going to be the product of a spreadsheet type of application that also allows you to visualize data. And as we said over and over in this course, pattern recognition is exceptionally important, okay? And that means to be able to look at a set of data, find a pattern in those data, and make a decision based on the pattern that you see, okay? And so we're going to look at databases. Now, by the time you finish today, you'll know more about databases than 90% of the people who are working today. You really will, except for the people, well, the other 10% of people who are out there, developers, etc. When you go apply for a job, you'll be able to say, I've worked with Access, I've worked with SQL, I've worked some with Oracle, I've worked with SAS, Visual Analytics, which is, I think, the best product out there, and I've worked with SAP. And an employer is going to say to themselves, I have somebody who I can really work with because you're familiar or you feel a comfort level with those products. And it's also important to understand this. When you look at Access, you're seeing a template, the basis for which all databases are created. And it's also the product of object-oriented programming. All of the icons, all of the drop-down menus, all of that is developed from what we call object-oriented programming, where we program an object. Well, look, when we did the macros, it's basically the same thing. When I worked with my very first database, there was none of this. I worked at what we call the DOS level, and I was writing code, and then I'd hope I got the results that I was supposed to get. Today, what you have in front of you with Access, 25 years ago, only the top companies in the world had this kind of a powerful database. And Access is nothing compared to the commercial products that are out there, but it's a good way to get you started. And it's back to the thing I said before. I'm going to teach you how to drive. Now, will you be driving a NASCAR vehicle? I don't know. Will you be driving a Lamborghini? I don't know. Will you be in a Formula One racer over going through Europe? I don't know. When you get to that point, hopefully you'll have the experience and the skill driving that you won't wrap yourself around a tree or somebody else. But I will get you to the point where you can drive, and then you can build on those skills. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to look at basically starting today with a lot of emphasis on tables. Now, in the section before, I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that databases are everywhere. They're so obsequious. They're such a part of our our life experience that we don't even realize it. When you open your phone up and you choose an app, you're using a database. When you go and you order off of a menu in a fast food place or a restaurant, you're basically you're ordering off of a database. If you're setting the settings for your home, if you have like an alarm system, you're using a database. Databases are everywhere, and they're exceptionally powerful tools for us in business because they give us the ability to collect, store, and harvest or extract enormous amounts of data that we can then comb through and find patterns. And when we find those patterns, we've found some information. Then if we find that pattern recurs under certain conditions, we have what we call knowledge. And then if we find that knowledge tends to work across a lot of different industries or situations or economic situations, I have some business wisdom. And I have a deeper understanding. And I'm not certain, I may have mentioned this before, but we know this, okay? When an average employee of any company walks out the door, they leave. They take $25,000 worth of knowledge with them. When a person works in a knowledge-intensive firm and they leave, they take out about $250,000 of worth, okay? And one of the things about databases that make them such an important tool to understand is that they allow us to move away from just simply trying to flail around and understand what's going on in the world to collecting data that can tell us three things. One, how am I performing internally? Two, how am I performing in terms of my transactions with my key stakeholders, most importantly, my customers? And then number three, what kind of conditions am I operating in? The economic conditions, okay? And that really is the gist of it. Now, with the thing that we call relational databases, I'm able to take tables and tie them together, thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them, and generate things like the results out of a Google search. Or get profiles on my customers or my key suppliers, to go over to the SEC and comb through all of the data from all the reports of these public firms and look for value. I'll show you another one, okay? And I probably talked about this before, but let's just look at it here for just a minute. I'm going to take it. This is a place called Amazon. Amazon has a database behind it. This is, on top of it, they have layered a recommendation engine, and this is what we would call a form. I'm going to input data here. Looks like my wife has. She's got 10 things in her cart she's looking at, okay? And they've got all kinds of stuff they want to sell her. And isn't it nice of them to show me stuff that she would want to buy? And if I logged in there on my own self, same story. Amazon makes more money from its Amazon Web Service, which is an online analytical processing tool, i.e. a gigantic, incredibly powerful database. Governments rent space from them, major corporations, etc. Okay? So the value of a database is just off the charts. If I can't find something, I can't buy it. If I can find it, I can buy it. And Amazon now is an intermediary for the entire world, a place where buyers and sellers come together. I'll show you another one which is a company that I'm very interested in. And we'll go over to a place, and it's called Turner Classic Movies. I may have told the story before, but it bears repeating. Turner Classic Movies. How did they get started? Well, back in the late 80s and early 90s, as the major studios in Hollywood started to shut down because they'd been run out of business by the independent filmmakers, etc., they had these catalogs, i.e. all these old movies. And Ted Turner is a very smart man. And his brain said, I'm going to buy all of these old movies, and I'm going to begin to restore them. Why? Because I'm going to sell them. So he bought catalogs from all the major production companies. Now, let me say this. You may have heard somebody use the term for Hollywood in its heyday as the dream factory, and it was. I remember as a kid, my parents went to California to see all of our relatives, and we went through MGM, and literally there were 12 movies being made on the MGM lot that day. 12 movies, okay? And I'm going, wow. So he's buying all these movies. Well, he had a thing down there called the Superstation, which is now known as TBS. And Ted had an idea. He said, I'm going to buy these films. I'm going to restore them as much as I can. And then I'm going to go out to all of these TV stations that shut down about 12 o'clock. None of you remember this, but there was a day and time when the Channel 4, Channel 5, and Channel 9 Oklahoma City had the Star Spangled Banner, and they went blank. You've seen the old thing of the picture tube with the symbol and there. And Ted Turner said, have I got a deal for you? I can sell you some movies. And I'll bet you there's a bunch of your audience who will want to stay up and watch these movies. And he knew also that there were video recorders and the tools that would let people record those things were on the way. And he said, you have people who want to buy these movies, and your advertisers are going to have eyeballs. And it took off. And today, if you take the catalog, the original catalog that he bought, okay, that catalog is worth 50 times what it was when he paid for it. 50 times. He made $50 for every dollar he spent. Find me a business anywhere else, maybe other than chip makers, that do that, because he understood that they had value, and he has them in a database format. He saw that. So databases provide us also a business model from which we can work. You say, well, I don't want to do that. Well, let me show you something. It's another one. Here's Hulu. Hulu doesn't sell cars. Hulu doesn't sell shirts. Hulu doesn't sell anything except movies and television programs. And if you have Hulu, or if you have a cable that's connected, every time those movies are shown, the people get paid. The folks that are on MeTV love all of us because they're getting a payday every time you and I dial in to watch the Andy Griffith Show, or whatever, Leave It to Beaver, or whatever might hit your fancy. Okay? So databases change everything. Our capacity to store and move this data so quickly, and to store we can store almost anything digitally. So we're going to take a look at this database, and we'll look at ACCDB1, and we'll open it up here, and we're going to see that we have 4 things in every database. You have tables, that's where I store the data. I have forms, that's how I collect and harvest data, and I have queries, okay, and those are where I extract data from the database, and then I have reports. And we have the concept of a warehouse, okay, and we go in and we get data, we extract it, and that's the terminology we use, because that's literally what we're doing, okay. So if I look here and we start to talk about tables, the form becomes the most important piece before I build a table. Now, let's look at a table just for a moment, and let's see what we're talking about. I've got this table here. It's called Northampton, and it's got company ID, the name, the address, the city, the state, the zip, the contact people, the department that those people are in, okay? It's got when was the last time they ordered, and that is now important information. What I have here in this table is what I call dimension data, i.e. characteristics or variables, like what state are they in, and then a fact column that's part of the record, and that's when did they last order from me. And now I have information. I can make decisions with this, and I can do something with it. Now, if you want to look at how the table is designed, you can look up here, and in the corner you'll see a little design icon, or you can click on the tab, and let's go take a look at it. Now, if we're storing, say, 50,000 to maybe 1 million records, storage space is no big deal. When we create a table in the database, we literally take up space inside of a machine. Physical space. And because we do, it comes at a premium the more records we try to store. So we invented the query system that allows me to take a snapshot of the table, and the alteration of the table, the changes in the table, that's left to the people who run legacy data, because my table is a legacy, okay? It's known as legacy data. And so I can run a query, and I take a snapshot, and I extract some data, and what gets saved is not the picture, but the code. And that means I can run query after query after query, which means I can go and see this modern miracle thing. And I'll go over here and here's a form. And how do I know it's a form? Look at these things in the bottom here. I'm training Google to give me the information I want them to give me. I'm interested in Oklahoma Baptist University. I want to know about KOCO News. It's really the weather. YouTube, I got there. Vital Source, where I got my textbooks. Zoom. Oh, okay. AOL. Weather again. He is a weather freak, isn't he? And we've got, there's Amazon. I can add anything else. But these are the results of what I've been visiting. And so each time I do a search in Google, I'm filling a form and they're putting that in a table. That's how they know so much about me and how they know so much about you. I'll show you another little cute use of a database. Let's do this, and I'll click on a new tab, and I'm going to click on Google Apps. Okay. This, you see me here in my incognito form? I'm in incognito mode. I'm saying to all the spies and people out there, no, you will not get my data. But I'm going to click on Maps. And let's see where I've been today. Can I find out? You betcha. I click on a thing called your timeline. And look at that. It's going to pop up. And this is from a database. And let's see. I've been a good boy. I went straight from work to work, straight from home to work. I didn't stop at the beer to shoot pool at the beer hall. I didn't stop at the liquor store. I've been a good boy. And here's the better. You see the little thing called raw data? Show raw data, boom. It gives me minute by minute by minute. And I can scope down into that. I can put it into satellite mode. It's in map mode now. And this is accurate within about 100 feet. So if you have a phone, unless you've turned the GPS off, it's tracking you. I was with a party yesterday who lost, or thought they had lost, their iPhone. They also had one of the little wristbands. And he was at near wit's end. And I said, look, you got the little thing, click the ping. And you can ping your phone. Now, my Android phone, if anybody ever steals it, they're in for a bad surprise because I can track my phone. And guess what I can do? I can turn on an exceptionally loud, about 80 decibel horn for about 15 minutes. And I can find my phone. So he pressed on his watch and it goes bing, bing, bing. It was in the car. He had dropped it, it was in the seat. So he thought he was, in this terrible thing, but luckily he pinged his phone. Here I am. Now, the other interesting thing, and this is a database. Look what I have here. I have a view. I've run a query that says, tell me where I went today, okay, based on my phone, and put it in map portion. Let's go satellite, because that's prettier. Look at that. And I can go right in. And I can go, and I can pretend I'm a United States Air Force drone about to make a visit upon a bad person. That's a database. Location data, and you'll have a case in here where you use location data, can tell you a whole lot about what's going on with somebody, what's going on with their world, their life, etc. But this is all possible because of a database. If I want now, I can also do this. I can click on export this data KML. What this will do is it will take, and the KML is a special GIS language. Then I can go out on the internet for free and I can find a converter, and what it will give me is every single coordinate, GPS, global positioning coordinate, for that whole string and the time where I was there. Neat, huh? Now, I leave my location on the GPS because I want to check in somewhere and go, hey, I'm having dinner with yada, yada, yada. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Now, what we have here in this database is also, say, for Oracle, is known as the data dictionary. Access uses what we call a GUI, graphic user interface. They use lots and lots and lots and lots of icons. So you and I can just click on an icon. I can't remember, I used to know the exact number of employees that work at Microsoft who work on Access year round. I think it's probably maybe a couple of thousand, maybe 3,000 people. So you and I can have this. Now, this is the progenitor, the model for all the other really fancy ones that come, that are out there that you'll be using. Let's walk through this. I've got a field name, and the combination of field names gives me a record. And notice I have a thing called data type, and then a thing called the description, optional. Now, if we were out at work for real, and you were responsible for tending to a database for me, or that was, say, maybe probably part of a data mart, and I didn't see the entries in here, or when this was created, and what this is supposed to be, and what it means, we'd have a serious discussion. So while this is optional, it's important so that we know how we created it, why we created it, and when we created it, what do we mean? Also becomes the issue of what we call the field properties. Take a look here we're in the company ID, and go down to the bottom where it says field properties, okay? And you're gonna notice that we allow long integers, okay? And we also have the decimal places are automatic, so we use the default for access. And then notice where it says required, and it says yes. The record number is required. The record will not save unless I have a record number. Why? So I can, first of all, have a serial recording of everything that's in that table. Plus, I can use that customer ID, the company ID in some other tables to be able to link tables together and start to harvest those data. Now, as I come down here, I see it's required, and then it says, is it indexed? Yes, no duplicates. So I can never have any duplicated records as far as just the data on the company. When we create a table, we should never create a table with data that we don't require to have. You're wasting time and energy. You're wasting money. And you're creating for yourself a thing called the problem of the null, where I get an empty value and I don't know, well, is this part of the report, this record, is it missing because, well, the folks who input the data that Monday morning had a rough weekend, maybe too many domestic battery situations, maybe not enough Red Bull. I don't know. But I've got junk. I've told you probably before, it's one of my favorite stories. I had a client who had a new visitor slip that had 43 items, and the data were inputted by a volunteer into their system. And they'd get these reports with all of these empty spaces. They go, what is going on? And I said, do you really want to get all 43 pieces of information from this person who's visited you? Well, what do you need? Well, we need this and that to contact them. I said, anything else? Well, we're kind of hesitant to do this. We might want to have a field there that says whether or not they want us to visit them. And I said, oh no, let's don't do that. Let's leave that. Let's not have that, so we can call them and really annoy them. And they all kind of laughed sheepishly, but they understood where I was coming from. One of the reasons that we try to automate the population of tables today, like with swipe cards or you inputting the data like when you registered a website, et cetera, is so that you can do the table for us. Or the machine, when I swipe my credit card or debit card, all that data goes into tables, and it's as accurate as when I created the account. There's no human factor involved with any of that. That's why when you go up, if you're kind of old school and you say, well, I'd like to have somebody check my groceries. And doop, doop, the scanner is putting it all into a database. You say, you're pretty hyped about these. Yes, I am. Because I worked with them, and I've been working with them for I don't know how many years, and I can tell you now, our capability to understand our businesses is greater than it's ever been. And you're going out, all of you are going out into the most competitive workforce that's ever existed. You're competing with people from all over the world. China has more merit scholars than we have students in college. That should give you pause to think. And if they have no intention to let you and I have a better lifestyle than they do, which means they're going to use global trade to every advantage they can. So our capacity to master these tools and to understand what's happening and to be nimble and to respond is absolutely imperative. So we've got some other things here, like the state. Click on state, and it's on a short text. Is it required? Why no? Why require it? We don't care what state our customer's in, do we? You say, are people out there really that stupid? Yep, they are. Yes, they are. Big business likes to tell government and everybody else how good they are. I worked on when I was a graduate student, I worked on a case for one of my profs. I won't tell you who the company was, but they had a room about twice this size with 30 employees, and all they did was the phone rang, and they had the organization chart for the entire company. And someone would run over and say, so-and-so's just quit, so we have an empty slot, or so-and-so is now vice president. And they had it all, so they knew their entire, the hierarchy of the company. That's all those people did all day long. That's a very productive use of time. And then they're not here anymore. Think about it. So I want to have that required. Now, if anybody would like to spell Mississippi, yes?
So for all these things, it looks like nothing. It always says no in the required box.
And if you're going to have that field, my professional opinion, require it.
Okay.
Otherwise, don't have the field. Don't.
Sure. So that means if you have a form where you ask for the company, the address, the city, and you run the query, it's not going to require.
Yeah, if you have the form will input data to the table. Now, the table sets the rules for the form. Okay, the form is just a way to input data, but the rules for the form, how the data are inputted and what data are inputted, are set here in the table. So if I say everything is required and someone has that form, it won't save. The record will not save. And that's why I say never have something you don't require. It's nonsense.
Right. So this is going to be like if your social security is required for something online, you're filling out a form and you don't put it in, it'll give you an error.
Exactly. Now what we do here is we use a dual primary key. Now this company ID, you see the little key thing beside it? That's called the primary key. Okay, that's what makes every record unique. We have two of them here. One is your school ID and one is your social security number. And we do that for security purposes so that your data are a little bit harder for somebody to get. Because they can maybe go get your social security number, but getting your OBU ID is a little bit different critter. And as I've said to the administration here, what do I know? I just teach this. We're like a flower full of nectar for a bird or a hummingbird, because all of you are old enough, just old enough to have a credit history, but you're young enough not to have a credit history. And identity thieves love college students because they can build an identity on you. And so we constantly have people who are out there who will want to get names, and there's the occasional person who will click on one of those phishing emails and they give up their data, and then the trouble begins. So my rule is, if you don't really need that or want it, don't have it in the form, and don't have it in the table. The table rules set the rules for the form. Make sure. Okay. Yeah. For example, on the state, okay, the field size is limited to 255 characters, which is the variable characters, which is that's the default for access. Now, that means if somebody tries to put in more than 255 characters, the record won't save. But if I don't require it and I have a form, a physical form, instead of, say, a card or something like that, the record can be saved, but I have an empty spot there, and I go, what state are they in? Follow me? He said, people really couldn't be this stupid. Trust me, they are. I'm just going to tell you that. I don't know how many times I've sat down with people and said, require it or don't have it there. And make sure that every table's like a paragraph. It's about one thing. That's a process that we call normalization. And that's so that we can utilize referential integrity to tie tables together, link them up, and then run queries on them and harvest all of that data. If I have this company ID, I can have another table where I have company ID, but it's not the primary key. It's just a field. But I can link the two of them, okay? And one's called the parent key and one's called the foreign key. That's what you got here. This is the one that I've got no. And here's another thing. How many of you can spell Mississippi? And how many of you can imagine how many ways I could spell Mississippi? And if I wanted to limit it to 2 characters, the state is AL. What is that? What's AR? Mine, I always have, is AR Arkansas or is that Alaska or whoever? And what about MN, MT, MO, MI on the 2 codes? So you could use what we call a lookup table that will put a drop-down menu. And I'll bet you when you go out and you interact and you buy stuff or you register, you'll see a little drop-down menus. And they limit your choices so they can handle the data, so that you have the states in a consistent format. Okay, let me show you another thing. Here's, click on zip code, okay? And you'll see here's the field size, and come down to the 3rd row where it says input mask and click on that. And then you'll see 3 little bars over here, okay? Click that. And this is an input mask wizard. And what this does, it says if you're going to input the data, this is for the zip code. Here's how we want it inputted. And you've got some other options if you care to do that. And you can even try it and notice I start to get these little cues from the field, and we'll put in the zip code here, and it's okay. if I don't put it in exactly, because it wants the 5 and 4. It wants the 4 digits. Why? It just specifies the 4 digits on a zip code specify within a zip code a particular quadrant, which just makes it easier for people to find you or to mail stuff to you or to ship stuff to you. Make sense? You got input wizards as well, and I'll cancel this. If you come down, do we have a phone number here? No, we don't. So I guess they don't. Our customers don't have a phone number. I guess they don't have an email. My table needs some work. Okay. So those are the fundamentals of what I want or what I'm going to be doing with a table. And I want to have some rules. One is I never have a field that I don't require. And number 2, to the extent possible, I use input masks or I limit characters to get just what I need and to not spend a lot of money on space. Now, between 50,000 and a million records, you're talking about negligible server costs, okay, storing this stuff. Beyond 1 million records, the higher it gets, the more expensive it becomes. It's, I guess you could say it's, I'll go out on a limb. It's a convex function. And you can get down to near 0, and then as the number of records goes up, the cost goes up, the storage cost. Most of the storage cost is not the machines or the chips. Most of the storage cost is taking care of the thousands of servers you have in a Google server farm, the security, heating and cooling, and all that. And that's why the nirvana for these guys is getting chips that are really, really exceptionally tiny and don't generate a tremendous amount of heat. When you use electricity, you generate heat. So Oklahoma has, I think, 1 or 2 Google data farms, and they're all in these conditioned environments. They're exceptionally secure, etc., because they're storing and handling such a tremendous amount of data. Okay, now let's take a look here for a minute, and let's go down to the form. Once we've created a table and we've created the rules for the input of each of those fields, we have a thing called a form. Now this just makes it easier for me, and as I add on, you can see down here I can navigate through the form. I can add a new form. I can navigate records. I can go in here and I can navigate the records. I can do a search. I can add a new record. And so if I'm lucky, my customers will do all this work for me, or they'll swipe a card that does it for me, or they'll do some work like when you buy something, you put in your data, let's say Amazon, you put in your data and then a credit card. And if you've made many purchases over a number of years like I have, when the credit card gets updated, I have to change that, but everything else is the same. So Amazon just says, okay, he's using a credit card, but all the other same stuff. And then where to ship it, et cetera, et cetera. These are also useful if you have a calling center operation. Somebody calls in and says, hey, this is Susan Woods. And you search for Susan. You say, Susan, could you give me your company number? Boom. And we've got our records. And in addition to this data, we may have some stuff like Susan likes cats. So let's ask her how her cat is doing. And Susan likes Susan likes paintball. And so I'm a good salesperson, and I've got some, and so I feed in over here. Susan likes paintball, so if I can chat some about paintball, I talk with Susan about paintball. If you called into our call center when you're being recruited here, if you did that, you had someone who said, oh, hi, hey, how's everything out there in blah, blah, blah. And maybe if we had some of your interests and stuff, you had a nice conversation. It all feels very nice. The database lets you tailor that. It also, if you want, you could add, that's a notes function. You can also go in and tailor the form so you have a picture of your puppy, you know, or mom and dad or whatever you want to have. But the form is designed to input data. How we set up the table dictates the form. As I just showed you a while ago, a form can be a Google, starting tab on Google. A form can be, I just go to Amazon. A form can be, I just go to Hulu and I haven't chosen what I want to watch. A form can be ESPN. I go to their website, and ESPN is a technology company first and foremost. And if you go to their website, think about, I can choose your team and their standings, all this stuff. Why? Because they're selling advertising. Now, I think one of the better companies now that's using this approach is Fox Sports. The other night, my wife and I were, you know, we're subscribers to Cox Cable, and because I'm getting it cheaper than I could. I'm getting close to cutting them out, but I've had them for so long, and I'm an old guy, so I'm kind of curmudgeons, that kind of stuff. But we saw on Cox they were supposed to have the Cardinals game. They don't. They got some schmucky other team on there I don't want to watch. Okay? So I said, go to Fox Sports Go. And we got serious so we can listen to the game, but we want to see it. So she goes to Fox Sports Go, and guess what? Fox Sports has the game live, and I streamed it to the TV, and I watched the game. Because they understood that database approach. They have a menu, and people want to see them. When you go open up your phone, your app, it's a menu. They're so obsequious, these are, that we really don't understand. We use them all the time, but we don't get the sense of them. But they're also fantastic business models. And like with Ted Turner and TCM, he's one of those stories. Amazon is the same thing. eBay is an intermediary between people that are selling to each other. And it's a worldwide auction. You just log in there and start looking. And you find somebody that'll ship it to you and all that. There are all kinds of those business opportunities waiting out there. Now, let's look at another thing here, and this is going to be a thing called a query, okay? Now, a query is a question. And here we have a query where we wanted to know who are our clients in Kansas City. Oh, this is nice to know their title and so forth. But if I'm planning to go to Kansas City, I probably want to get their address, phone number, etc. But there's something more important I want to know. If you look up in the far left corner, you'll see a thing called Design. Click on it, and this takes you to the design view. All right? And this will show you the table I'm working with, the fields I'm working with, and then you see these little boxes, whether I'm suppressing the data or I'm including it. And here my criteria is Kansas City. Now, so that I won't get a bunch of records that say Kansas City, Kansas City, Kansas City, Kansas City, I name the query to telegraph it's Kansas City, and then I suppress the data. But I'm going to go over there, and I'm interested. So there are some other things I want to try to get. I want to get their last order. Right now I have data, but when I add last order, I have information because it's something I can make a decision with. So I'm going to run the query in honor of Forrest Gump. I'll go, run, Forrest, run. There it is. Now, why would I want to know their last order? Well, they're my customers. I want to know the last time that they bought something from us. Now, if I want to, I can come in, and all these databases now have this capability. I can filter, and I can sort from the oldest to the newest. And so this is somebody I need to go see. If I want to enhance my ability to make some more, my decision-making ability, in other words, to see a pattern, well, here I have a order pattern field, and I'll just add it, and I'll run the query. And now I'm going to pull these titles over here, and I can see the order pattern, and I means it's increasing, S means it's stable, and there's an order pattern table over there. D would be decreasing. So if I look at this, I see, okay, well, who do I go see first? I'm probably going to go see Martin Mechanics. Why? Because they're buying more and more stuff from us all the time. And when was their last order? Oh, okay. Does this make sense? At this point, you know more about databases and how they should operate than 90% of the people out on planet Earth. These are such incredibly powerful tools, and our ability to see patterns. Now I can see a pattern. I see in Kansas City what? My sales are basically stable. That could be good news. It could be bad news. It could be good news in the sense that, well, they're pretty consistent in their orders. It could be that I'm a setting duck for someone who might come in and undercut me on price or quality. Now, if I have 1,000 of these and they have some other data in them, like the amount of stuff ordered or anything of that, I can also do something a little bit more useful. I'm going to close it. I'll save it. I can take this and I can export it to Excel. I may have legacy data in Excel spreadsheets that I can import them into my database. If you're lucky, you'll be working with SAS, Visual Analytics, maybe SAP, maybe Oracle. One of the things about those companies that they do very well is they impose a tremendous amount of discipline on their customers. In other words, if you buy Oracle's retail program, they tell you what fields to have, what queries to run and when, etc. They provide a query discipline for you, a calendar, a reporting calendar. And they tell you, look, if you're going to spend $1 million on our system or $500,000, you want to use it right or not? Okay. So you can export that data out of there. Queries are powerful things. Then we have the things that reports, and it's exactly what it says it is. It's a way for me to take the data I have and extract a report, and it's just generally a tabular type of thing. See, if I have a whole bunch of data, if I have 2,000 records of my sales, how much someone bought of that item, what was the cost of the order, what was the date, I'm going to take that and put it into Excel, or if I'm fortunate enough to be working for somebody that has a hybrid tool like SAS Visual Analytics, I'm going to visualize those data because I look for patterns. You've heard me say this over and over and over. We're always searching for patterns. A database enables me to, well, as many tables as I've got and I can string together, I can get them. Now, if you want to see what we call the data flow, okay, click on this thing called Database Tools, okay, and then click Relationships. Well, we don't have any of these tables that are related, okay? But if we had two tables that had a parent and a child together, we have let's see, we have the Northampton table, okay? And then we have another table that's called discounts, where the first field is the name of the company's ID. The next field is the product group, or is probably the name of the company. And so we can run the two of them together, and we can see, using those two tables, what are we doing with discounts. Now we're going to get into some cases later on where we do tie some tables together. One of the other tools that I have in the database tools is this, and you'll want to click on the database tools and click on this thing called object dependencies. And it says it's going to take it a run. Now, I've got this query. It's called Kansas City Clients. What objects depend on me? In other words, am I the source of data for a particular object? No. But what am I dependent upon? That table. This lets me start to understand data flows within my database. Now, it's unlikely that you'll be deep diving into one of these, into an application, unless you go get a degree in computer science and decide to become a database administrator, or you're just curious about it. But having a good understanding of this is important for two reasons. Number one, you'll be able to use the tool that you have at the top, and that is going to be the tool at the top is going to be giving you those KPIs, okay, knowledge, key performance indicators, the dashboard. But more importantly, it will enable you to have an intelligent conversation with your IT people, or if you're using a vendor, to have an intelligent conversation with them. Then you have an ally. I can't emphasize enough to you that as you go through these courses with us, and you take accounting, you take marketing, you take a course like this, always be thinking about, I want to understand this so that when I sit down in a meeting, I see the perspective of the marketing person. I see the perspective of the manager. Why? Because that's how owners think. That's how they think. They have to look at all of those different perspectives and try to look and say, okay, what are these folks trying to tell me? And if you can't speak the lingo, or you don't understand what they're trying to communicate with you, you're in bad luck, because business is a team sport. It's a team sport. Always has been and always will be. Now, I want to take just a few minutes and talk about the Garden 01, because I think I've laid out here for you pretty much what the basics of a database, the basics of a table. A table creation really goes back to you saying, who are our customers? Well, our customers, what do we need to know about them? What is it that we need to know about every transaction? When we do a purchase order, what do we need to know? When we send an order out the door and we ship it, what do we need to know? When we have inbound freight, what do we need to know? What do we need to know about the external environment? What's going on out there? Is there any legislation that's about to impact us? If I'm a contractor in Shawnee and the city council decides to change the code, I'd better be on top of that, because if I go out and build something and they come and inspect it and I'm not up to code, guess what's going to happen? I get a fine and I get to tear it all out. Does this make sense? I hope so. I truly do. Let's look at the garden, and that one I have that's over in those Lambert and Cox files, and I've got that identified for you here. This is just like the Excel. These are the pages it covers, and it's Garden 01. Now the garden is useful, and again, and I've got this just right now in read only. If you really want to have that step by step by step by step experience, the Lambert and Cox text is excellent for that, because it will give you screenshot after screenshot of what's going on. I'll just show you here. Okay. And this is chapter 1, and this is they're looking at this database, and they've got the products table and then categories. And notice here, one of the things they do is in the exploring queries section of that chapter 1, they show you how to link queries. Notice if you look at the two queries, they're joined on category ID. You see that? Now, because they're joined on category ID, I can run a query that harvests data or extracts data from both the categories and the products table. The category ID, where it's the primary key, that's what that little key is there. And then I have embedded in the products table a category ID field, and we call that a foreign key. One's known as the parent, that's the left, is known as child. But now I can harvest the data from those two tables. And the more of this I do, and this is why referential integrity is so important, the more I can string these tables together, or the more I can string queries together, the more data I can put there, the more data I can harvest, and then I can take and put it into some application that will enable me, if I need to do quantitative analysis, and then to provide me visual data, tables, charts, etc., so I can look for patterns, because I'm always looking for patterns. I'm always engaged in figure recognition. I know that some of you in here today, and some of those who are out there listening, that just doesn't set well with you. I understand that. I didn't make the rules. These are the rules that have been imposed on us. And if you are not up to stuff as far as that goes, you won't go very far. You'll be lucky if you do. And if your company is averse to this type of thinking, they're doomed. They're finished. I never really believed any of this until I had my father had a client that he had worked with for years and years and years. He had a small grocery store out in western Oklahoma. And for the wholesalers, delivering to him became cost prohibitive. The marginal revenue they made from taking groceries to him was they were losing money. So suddenly, how would you feel if you own a grocery store and nobody will deliver food to you? You're out of business. Okay? Now, I know my dad had talked to him several times, saying, mate, you need to get into town. I don't want to be in town. You need to go into town. I don't go into town. Okay? I had a similar situation with a client who was dependent. This is a client who was dependent upon products. He was a jobber or a representative here for a company back in Germany that sold large rock crushing machinery. When they build a highway, they take highway and once it's all churned up, they take it to folks like his clients and they recycle that stuff. And so these are gigantic machines as big as this room where they take all these big chunks of concrete and they bounce them or they crush them. And when the machine's down, he would tell me, when the machine's down, my client's losing 50 to 100 grand a day. So I worked with him on developing a database and encouraging his client, take a picture and fax it to us so we know what's going on, because he had clients scattered all over the Midwestern United States. So driving out there is going to be problematic. And so we got that all fixed up, and his customers were loving him. Then, a little bit of a trade skirmish between the manufacturers in this country and over there. And suddenly the price for the machinery went out the roof. Now, they wouldn't sell him the machinery, he leased the machinery. And so he was faced with either going out of business or trying to work on about a 0.5% margin, and he said, I'm done for. He had an outside external force, and I had said to him several times, you have a good business model. Can you diversify this? I think we're okay. I had the German folks over last week, and I wined them and dime, and they love me. Okay. That's business. Well, so you have that resource there if you choose to take a look at it and to comb through it. And you can see how they've, step by step, they've combined these two queries. The two queries. Look, if you're going to go looking for, if you want to catch a shark, you're not going to go to Draper Lake or Texoma to catch a shark. You're going to go to the ocean. So if I want to understand and have a deep understanding of my customers and their purchasing habits and their lifestyle and all of that, I'm going to get every bit of data I can collect to look for patterns. And I'm going to close it off because we've gone and I'm intensely interested in this and intensely hopeful that, for some of you will go, wow, that's something I really, maybe I ought to be in that business, or man, I really ought to be mindful of that. It may be a great opportunity for you. But I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. I've probably shown you this before, but let's go do a search for Esri tapestry. Okay. Esri tapestry. Esri is in Redlands, California, and we're seeing a revolution not only in database, we're seeing a whole revolution in map making and cartography and in the use of geographic information systems. And I've always been a nut about maps. I've always been a nut about geography. So I take a lot of continuing education courses from them. And I try to infuse a little bit here or there in our courses so that you could see the potential. But if you do Esri and click on the zip lookup, okay? This is a database, and you're now looking at a form where you're going to start to do a query. This is the baby tool. The real one is exceptionally expensive. And the people at Esri, here's what they've done. They've built an algorithm that mimics the United States Census, and they run it every year. And their accuracy levels are astoundingly high. If I might have shared this with all of you. I took a course from them. It was called the Location Advantage. And this was locating businesses and looking at the spatial elements of a business. My father, before he went out on his own, he worked with store location, new stores. Where would they put it? I remember as a kid watching him counting traffic and all this stuff. I did, in 45 minutes, what it took my father, a seasoned person who'd been doing it for 25 years, took him 3 months to do. If he'd been alive and I'd shown him, he'd have had a heart attack, or he would have looked at me and said, man, I'm going in the location business. And I had it all laid out there. With this, you can get a picture of the neighborhood, their characteristics, comparative data, state, federal, that zip code. This is just the baby tool. If I'm Lowe's and I want to locate a store, am I going to put my new store in an area where people are building new houses, and you're my new consultant, I just hired you, and you're my management trainee, and I'm going to have you come in and sit in some of our meetings? And you say, okay. And you're sitting there with all these other people, and I'm going to ask you, we're going to put in a store in. Should we put it in an area where we're building a bunch of new houses, or should we put it in an older neighborhood? And why? Now, there's out of every 100 students I'm going to have, there will be 5 to 10 of you who will say, well, yeah, okay. And that person who asks you the question is going to go, I got a live one. Then there's going to be a person who goes, because they practice being numb and speechless in class. If you think you'll sit in these classes when profs ask you a question or ask you to respond and you just sit there mute and you'll turn it on and you go to work, ain't going to happen. You're getting a habit. Now, there will be times when it's better to shut your mouth, and you'll learn that. But there are going to be times when you're starting your career and someone's going to ask you a question. There's a reason. They want to see if you're thinking. So, which neighborhood do I put the store in? And why? I'll show you one other and then I'll shut up. Now, I know I'm a little bit over the top with this. I understand that. And it can really, I can be annoying. I understand that. But wouldn't you rather have a business prof that really cares about you being successful and really wants you to have the best tools available than someone who just get up here and mumble and then draw a paycheck? Which would you rather have? Or you want someone who will entertain you and tell you jokes? I've told the dean several times, my classes are not entertaining. I know that Jimmy Kimmel is very entertaining. He has 12 writers that work for him, and he covers 5 minutes a night, 5 times a week. I cover 75 minutes twice a week. Get me about 30 writers, and this will be a laugh-a-thon. I can make it entertaining. If I'm working with these data, and I'll show you, this is the Association of Religion Data Archives. Here is an incredible tool that will let a church see who its competitors are, that will let a church look at the data that are out there about itself. There's just, you could see the research hub that's there, statistics. We know, for example, that at about 15 minutes, people quit driving to that church. So if you're 15 minutes away, it's just like falling off of a wall, falling off of a cliff. You'll hit, if you get a cumulative probability, it's about 5 minutes, 7 minutes is optimal. 10, not too bad. You get to 15 minutes and they're not coming. If you have a particular geographic, in your zip code, if you have a particular composition of people and you don't historically have not fit that, you're in for trouble. And I can drive you all through Oklahoma City and I can show you church after church after church that when I was your age were the best churches in the state. And today, well, a lot of them are empty shells. Why? because they didn't look at the changing demographic and they didn't adapt. And they probably exist, they probably moved out to the suburbs or whatever. But this is a tremendous tool that gives you all kinds of information. It's a database. Some great stuff. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you letting me bark at you. I know I get pumped and I start raising my voice at Sarah. But hopefully, you'll see some of this and it'll trip the brain and go. Now, any questions? Okay, folks. Thank you so much. God bless you, and I'll see you online Tuesday. So if you have any questions, please let me know.